Good morning again, and welcome back to Brighter Morning with Bhoe. My name is Bhoe Tewarie, and we have another guest on the show to talk about the economy and about business in Trinidad and Tobago. We also have a couple of clips from the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley. We'll get to that. But what we will do, we'll play the clips one by one, and then we will have Peter George, Mr. Peter George, who is the owner of the Trent Restaurant Group, a number of restaurants in Trinidad and Tobago and throughout the Caribbean, and who has been very outspoken on the issues having to do with business, the economy, government decision making, etc. And we'll follow that. So let us begin by playing the first clip about the announcement of vaccines. And we'll have Mr. George speak to that, and then we'll have a conversation. Then secondly, we'll go to the Prime Minister's clip on the opening up of the economy, and we will speak to that particular issue. And then the third issue is that we'll have the Prime Minister speak about the tax on cars issue, and that would be the final clip, and we'll build the discussion around those three clips. Is that okay? All right, so we go now to the Prime Minister's clip. Peter, are you on?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good to have you on. And we'll have a good conversation this morning. I'm going to build the conversation around three short clips by the Prime Minister based on his press conference on Saturday. The first one is basically on the vaccines, announcing the vaccines. We'll have a discussion about that. Then the other one is the announcement about the opening up of restaurants for curbside delivery, etc., and manufacturing and car dealerships. And the third one is where he talks about the taxation issue on the cars and ministers being allowed to buy. So we start with the first one. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
That brings us to the point that the vaccination program is voluntary. It is voluntary. And therefore, those people who understand, and I'm saying here today, after a year and a half, there should really be no person in Trinidad and Tobago who does not know that we as a people are in a pandemic, meaning that there's a virus out there that could infect us, and it could make you sick, and it could kill you. I don't know there's anybody in this country who's paying attention who would not know that. So the next step is, how do you respond to it? I am happy to report at this time that there are significant numbers of people in this country who are accepting that the response to this virus now is to do what we had not done before and could not do before, which is to vaccinate the population and get as many people as possible triggered in their bodies a response so that if the virus infects them, they would not get too seriously ill and they would virtually eliminate their chances of dying. Looking around the world where the vaccination program had been well ahead of ours, is one thing coming after the others. You can learn from what happened to them. In all the countries that we are observing, the cohort of the population that has been vaccinated has been responding much, much better to the virus than the cohort that has not been vaccinated. In some situations, there are large populations that are vaccinated and from which they have observed, even when infections take place, there have been no significant death resulting. But in unvaccinated populations, the situation remains the same, where significant numbers of infected people get seriously ill and many of those people die. Today, I want to say to the country that we've traveled this path together. It's been very, very difficult. From an economic standpoint, it has been virtually disastrous. From the personal standpoint, for very many people who live at the edge of the economy, it has been extremely difficult. And for some people who lost family members, it has been extremely painful. But now that we are in the vaccination stage, we are not in the same position as we were a year ago, or 6 months ago, or even 3 months ago. We now have a choice to make. And therefore, the public policy has to shift. The government cannot isolate or take it upon itself to isolate individuals in this country. If the individuals in a situation of vaccination by volunteerism, if such a person decides, I will take a chance on the virus and not take it on the vaccine, that is the individual choice that you are making. That is not a government choice.
Okay. Now, Peter, we ran that clip because it raises an important issue, which is that taking the vaccine is voluntary. The Prime Minister emphasizes. And secondly, basically, he's talking about the value of taking the vaccine to individuals. And it has implications for opening up. Do you feel, and there have been all kinds of expressions of opinions on this matter, do you think that the issue of vaccine should be voluntary? And how does that affect, let's say, your business and the opening up of your business and the, your approach to workers in your restaurant? Because if I am vaccinated and it is curbside now, but in the future you will open up. And if I'm coming to dinner at one of your restaurants and I am vaccinated, and you have a policy, for instance, in which you're going to allow vaccinated people to come to your restaurant, what is going to happen to, what would be your approach to your employees? Would you want them vaccinated or not? And how would you make that possible?
Well, okay, morning, everybody. I mean, first of all, yes, it's voluntary. I mean, I have been vaccinated, but at the end of the day, it's an individual personal choice, right? But I think the more pressing issue here is that we are, and there are countries, I should say, that have not made vaccination the precursor for getting their economy and their society back on track, right? I'm going to use Australia, for example, that I believe is 2% vaccinated. The United States began the full reopening. Now, again, their system is different to ours. When the country was about 17 or 18% vaccinated. I think they said at 43% now. So we cannot use, and we cannot fall into this, and I don't want to use the word trap, we can't fall into this narrative that unless we are vaccinated and until we are vaccinated, 30 or 40% of the country, there's not going to be any kind of normalization back to where it was. We have bungled this from the beginning, and I'm not here to asperse this government, but I'm here to as a matter of my personal opinion on facts. We have bungled this from the beginning. I mean, there was so much vaccine disinformation. We begging, but we're not begging. We're getting 400 from here, 200 from there, 500 from there. We're never really going to know what happened in the beginning, certainly with the offer from India, because that information is going to be kept, fairly close to, close to people's chests. So we don't know what happened. All we do know is that we've now reached the stage of saying we're going to vaccinate to operate. But I think it is a personal choice. We have engaged in all types of suasion to our staff, right? We're not going to tell people that you have to do this. We have told them how good the business will be, how it will redound on themselves if we were in a position to say our entire business is vaccinated, more from the level of comfort for the wider society. And unfortunately, we have 8 restaurants around 3 islands, but in Trinidad, some of the restaurants, from our surveys, have a 76% unwillingness to be vaccinated. So it's a very difficult process because you can't be going and putting a gun to anybody's head and telling them what to do. But the fact remains, if we are to follow other countries, and the Prime Minister always speaks about, what other countries are doing, and we're modeling ourselves on other countries. So we certainly are modeling ourselves on the assistance that they gave to individuals and to businesses to ensure the economic continuity of their country. I've looked far and wide, and there is near a country on this planet that has had to endure what we have had to endure, for the sustained level of time that we've had to endure with, and I'm going to say this, with virtually no assistance from the state. So,
okay, let me follow that by reading something that you said yesterday in the Guardian newspaper. You said every angle of the restaurant business has been restricted over the last 18 months. The opening of restaurants now is bittersweet, and we note that it is opening up for curbside delivery, not opening up of the restaurant.
right.
He said, and that is you, that is Peter George said, there was the possibility that if the macroeconomy is not stabilized, then more restaurants will close their doors in the near future. And I quote from you here again, we have been here 2 or 3 times. The government has not used taxpayers' money to help us. The plan cannot be to just reopen businesses, as you must understand the catastrophic damage that has been done to the economy since last year. I foresee more restaurants not reopening. Businesses have closed. Incomes have been atrophied. People have not gotten paid. They have a tremendous burden with the banks. And this morning you issued a tweet explaining what you said. Could you elaborate a little bit on that particular challenge that you see and what you feel the role of government needs to be and what they have not done and what do you think should be done?
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, the tweet really was to clarify, the slight misrepresentation with the Guardian, because what I had said was government has not used public funds to help us, and so using taxpayers' money to help taxpayers. If the public funds,
So
yeah,
you're really making the connection between public funds represent taxpayers' money,
yes,
and if taxpayers are in trouble,
correct,
because of something that they did not cause,
yes,
then
absolutely,
the taxpayers' money should be used for what is essentially a good cause, helping
yes,
taxpayers to get on their
yes.
feet. Okay.
Yeah, so it read a little bit poorly that using taxpayers' money to help business funds are to be used, if not to help the public, then what is it there for?
Let him be full on
Right?
the screen. Yes.
Right. So that was the idea behind that. Now, and I spoke specifically in the Guardian to restaurants, but the issue is there has been a lot of closures of businesses in the country, and I don't foresee them reopening. It's been, and I keep using the word catastrophic, and I just don't think people understand my position from the very beginning, because I was out there as early as June last year saying that the government is going to have to intervene. When an economy, and you would understand as Dr. Tewarie, when an economy, which those wheels are moving, just come essentially to a grinding halt, there are significant fallouts. We face those fallouts now. I am frozen on the screen, so I don't know if you're still hearing me.
I'm hearing you now, yes.
Right, yeah. So we're not going to know how bad it is, right? But the fact remains the difficulty, the challenges that people have, and to not get, I mean, quite frankly, to hear the Prime Minister say, I mean, this most almost indefensible comment 3 days ago, that the salary relief grants, will certainly be administered by the end of the year. I mean, made my jaw drop, right? So you have these public funds. And when I speak about the public funds that have been used, and I think it's time to go here now, people to understand that for the last 16 months, every single government official, every public official in the country, every public servant in the country, all 110,000 people on the public payroll have been paid in full for the last 16 months with the very same taxpayers' dollars that the Minister of Finance says they can't find any money to help businesses, and they've managed to muster up this measly $1,500 for the month of May in the last rounds, which still has yet to be properly administered. You begin to ask yourself that question: what exactly are public funds being used for? And there's a bit of a disconnect between the understanding of where we are, and where we need to be. So basically, this was, as I said in The Guardian, is bittersweet. Am I excited and over the moon about reopening? No. And we still don't know what exactly our roadmap is. It's another carrot being thrown out about curbside starts back on Monday. Curbside is not sustainable in our business. It helps to grease the wheels. But the reality remains that this is not a moment, this is not exciting. Before we've been shut, open back, more robust, meaningful plan.
But I get the impression, though, that you feel that the public sector is protected and the private sector is sort of marginalized, and that there is a misunderstanding by the government of the role of the private sector and the role of the connectivity between public and private sector, and that because of that they are missing the boat in terms of policy. Am I correct?
Yes, for the most part, yes. I mean, when the former Economic Advisory Board chairman to the country says that the government doesn't believe in business, it's just a fact. Business is viewed as a necessary evil, and it's actually exacerbated when, as business people, we don't speak out. We don't speak out. One of my biggest issues in the last 12 months is the private messages that I have received from hundreds of businesses, business people, about the stances that I have taken, but who were not willing to go out there themselves, right? We are not a necessary evil. People have to understand the importance of business in an economy, right? And in a society. I mean, if business were to fold up, right, we are looked at as this evil because that's propagated by our leadership class, and it's propagated by a business class that has not said, listen, we are gonna come out there and we're gonna make it eminently clear what we do and why we do. It's not just about making profit, it's creating value, it's creating opportunity. It's keeping people, keeping people's livelihoods intact. It's paying taxes to the state. It's keeping the state, the continuity of the state is important. It relies on business. Business people have been vilified in Trinidad as profit mongers, I should say. Now, are there business people who engage in illicit activity? Of course there are. It happens all over the world. But that doesn't mean you collectivize everybody. The absolute vast majority of businesses in this country are good, decent, hardworking people that contribute tremendously to this country. And we sit there, and every single time we come out and speak about where we think our country should be going, it's met by the state from the bully pulpit. And made out to be, how we must never. It's funny, Bhoe, how the government, and I speak about governments. I'm not just speaking about this government, and I know you're part of the previous government.
Yes.
For all of them, right? They can tell us how we should run business, but we don't dare tell government how things should be done. So there's not a symbiotic relationship between the two, and I think as a society we have to understand that.
So, can I appreciate that what you are saying is that the private sector would like to have a better engagement with government, would like to be more influential on the policy making side so that policies can facilitate the growth and development of business. And thirdly, that you basically want good governance in the country, and the private sector has a role in that process as well.
Absolutely. And not just, and you said we should have a role. And you see it happening certainly in the developed world and certainly in parts of our region. And when I spoke last year again about how we are being, and again, the media, listen, I am always open to the media. And, I made a comment, and it was amplified that I said the Prime Minister had no courage. But what I did say is there are Caribbean leaders who are displaying the type of courageous leadership needed, right, through collaboration with the private sector, individual stakeholders, and and civil society to understand where their country needs to go. What has happened in Trinidad is we have gotten this grandfather complex that government is unilaterally the only ones who can decide. And when this almost like a papal bull, when this bull is issued by the government, or this edict, we are meant to follow it without any type of doubt or hindrance whatsoever. So I think from a societal development aspect, right, we simply have not insisted that we are part, and I don't just mean business, I mean wider society has been part of the decision-making process. And when it does happen, it normally is some type of a photo op, or you find some of the major business bodies who, again, when government is the 50-pound gorilla in the room, and they're the biggest driver of spending in the economy, businesses depend on government, right? And by extension, you're in a position where you may have a difference with the policy, and I'm not just a criticism, Ebo. You may have a difference with the policy, but you don't come out and speak because, well, that may impact your business. And if you have a business that 1,000 people work with you and they depend on you, well, you don't want to say something that's going to get the government angry. So by extension, we have this stifling of the public's ability to be involved in the in the policy process. And I think that's one of Trinidad's biggest issues. It's been the biggest issue since I came back to Trinidad in 1995. And I think once that begins to change, and I don't know when it does, and that's the central part of my message, and if you've followed me, is that an engaged society, we have to get more engaged. We can't just sit there on our hands waiting for this with regards to this pandemic at least, wait till 2:30 every Saturday to be told what we can and what we can't do and when things are going to happen. We have to get far more engaged. And quite frankly, we're not, because good governance cannot happen without good citizens. And until we get engaged, we already have a tyrannical system. And I mean, we could discuss that a bit more, but we have a tyrannical system that if we don't get involved, we've seen the maximum leadership from Eric Williams all the way through, certainly Patrick Manning, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, and now to Dr. Rowley. So when someone tells me Rowley has a God complex, I say, well, he is God. In our system, he is God. So don't complain about it. We just have to accept it.
So we have, in your view, a democratic deficit, an engagement deficit, and we've got to find a way to resolve that in order to allow the society to go forward.
Flourish,
now,
yes.
You've articulated positions, and if I am not mistaken, I think you sent something to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. Did you get a response from them?
No, I know that the Minister of Finance referenced it when in the same day he had his conference, and he said, one economist calls me and says, don't go to the IMF and don't borrow. And then a businessman sends me a document today saying, borrow 5 million and stop taxing. And he threw his hands up in the air and says, what am I supposed to do? So he referenced it but he referenced it wrongly, because I never said stop taxing. I did say if you need to borrow, there's several avenues at our disposal, right? And all of these armchair critics in Trinidad, and I'm not going to call their names because they have, no relevance to me, right? Who said that, Peter George, instead of complaining, why doesn't he be part of the solution? Well, I put together we called it the Marshall Plan, based on, what happened post World War II in Europe. And there were 5 economists that looked at this document with me after I wrote it. And it really was just a discussion point, right? It was a discussion point to begin some type of dialogue between the government as far as what can be done economically. So I don't just come on television and radio and complain about what government should do. I put a document together that, there were things in there that probably were not manageable for the country. But as I told one of the media personalities, I said, when Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow and these guys went into a room to, for the CARES Act in America, where they put in, as of now, $4.5 trillion, they didn't agree on everything in the beginning. It was a working paper. Things went in the bin, things came out, ideas were discussed and hashed out. But it was a starting point. But the government would have gotten it. And this was a document that came from somebody in the private sector, somebody like myself, who's deemed to be, I guess, a hostile. And I guess the document just went into a drawer somewhere, or possibly into a bin. But it certainly was a good starting point for us to discuss, government assistance into businesses and to people to get us back to where we need to go. Because, like I said, this is not about reopening alone. We have a lot of pain to face.
Your submission was not acknowledged, and what you were hoping for was at least an engagement between the private sector and the government about reopening, and more than that, the economy going forward. Now, the fact that we're getting 800 vaccines now, Sinopharm's vaccine, is very important, though, because at least we will address the issue of mass vaccination. Perhaps for the first time, we have enough vaccines to vaccinate about 400 people. There are other issues related to 400,000, sorry. There are other issues related to that, but at least we have the beginning of the process of mass vaccination. Do you think that are you involved as a private sector member in the execution of these vaccines at all?
Yes, we are. Part of the Restaurant Alliance that we have written, we've made submissions to the Minister of Finance, Minister of Health. I believe there was an allocation of, I think, 10 or 15,000 vaccines to the restaurant, or I think maybe 20,000 to the restaurant sector. The guys have been doing a very good job. We all put our signatures on a document. But the hard part really is, Dr. Tewarie, as I mentioned in the beginning, is the vaccine hesitancy, right? So we can only do so much. And again, you have the misinformation. I think the head of the industrial court came out and made her comments. I don't know that is in fact, it may be her opinion. So there has to be some legal opining that needs to happen further as far as what, can you force people to vaccinate? I think the bigger issue we're going to face is that, when one of our brands, the Trotters brand, where we have 2 outlets, both Port of Spain and San Fernando, clocked it at 76% and 68% respectively on unwillingness to vaccinate, right? And the reasons were far and wide, from personal reasons to religious reasons to various different things. We've continued to have dialogue with them to try and get them to come around, But I think one part of the discussion that is being missed by people is that certainly in the working class of the country, and what people have had to endure over the last 50 years, right? When you think about the hardships and the difficulties, and people still having to get water in a bucket to bathe their children. There are no green spaces in their neighborhoods. Certainly, certain parts of Port of Spain living under joint army and police patrol. Neighborhoods are called hotspots. There's no running water. In many regards, people have, as some of my staff have told me, said, boss, we live in COVID for 30 years, right? So when you consider from that perspective, right? And that's why religion plays a huge role in Trinidad. People have been living under those conditions for so many years. The lack of trust has broken down considerably, that we've had to endure these living conditions, right? God has protected me for 40 years. Why is he not going to protect me now? And it's been an astonishing revelation in speaking to people in the last, couple of months with regards to this. So I think this is in many regards our own doing, that, they're going to view COVID as, it's just something else that I've had to endure at the hands of the state for the last 30 or 40 years. So why should I trust now that this is something that I should do? So we have some major hurdles to overcome. If we think that it's just going to be everyone's going to jump onto the vaccinate to operate stance, I think we're going to have some problems with the wider society to buy into the vaccination program, and I think that is our own doing, Bhoe, of the last 30 or 40 years. So that's something that we're going to have to overcome. I don't know how.
Okay. So, on the extent of opening up now, you have the manufacturing sector, you have the restaurant sector for curbside, you have itinerant vendors like doubles and so on opening up. You said that, you basically said that, look, it was welcome, but we haven't got far enough. I think that's a good summary of your position, that you're glad that we are opening up, but it has not gone far enough. And you have just said, for instance, that you can't survive on curbside. How do you think, as a responsible business person who wants your business open, and not only for the selfish reason of profit, but because you understand the value of commerce, of the private sector engaging, of people working in the system and what that means. And you have this issue of vaccines on the other side. We have about the potential to vaccinate about 400,000 more now. How would you like to see this proceed, and what do you think that you can do in your situation? I know that you just said that the restaurant players in the country are going to get about 20,000 vaccines, and you will try to work with your employees. How do you feel we should manage this, and how can we accelerate the entire process?
Well, it's funny that now, when I said maybe August of last year, or maybe September, my second round in the media, that we have to learn to live with this virus. These same social media commentators began to call me up, saying I put in profits before lives and all types of nonsense, right? The reality remains, we have to live with this. And all the major countries in the world that the Prime Minister continues to expound that we are trying to follow, they've begun to understand that we have to live with this virus. And they understood this quite some time ago. If we believe that vaccination is a magic wand, that's just not the case. Vaccination doesn't mean you can't get the virus again, nor does it mean that you can't transmit the virus. It just means that there's a far lower, at least is what we're told, a far lower likelihood of you getting a more potent strain of it. So we have to live with this. Does it mean we just throw caution to the wind and say, well, COVID is here and it's like the flu and just move on? No, it doesn't. But it has to be a balanced approach. Shutting down an economy is not natural, right? Shutting down a society is not natural. It's by every means unnatural. Those things are not meant to happen, right? We have to look at the damage that has been done far beyond the economy, within the society, family breakdowns. We are going to see all types of post-situational issues, depressions and suicides. And, people have lost, I can give you about 15 anecdotes of people who have lost their entire life. They have lost their business, small businesses, whether it's staff with cottage businesses that they've spent 10 or 12 or 15 years working, and they've lost it. So there's a lot of things that we have to deal with going forward. I think it's insulting to people to imply that, vaccination that's it. That's the magic wand. It shows a level of insensitivity It's a lot more than that. We should have been dealing with this, quite some time ago. And I think now the assistance that people ought to have received in order to ensure the continuity of their circumstance, of their lives, simply has not happened. Right? It has not happened. You simply cannot say, issue a state mandate, a public health ordinance, and say, this is what you need to do, and grab a parachute, and I'll see you on the other side, hopefully. It just does not work that way. So if we think that the vaccination is going to be the magic pill, it's not. And if we think that the issues that we had as a society and as an economy that prior to COVID are simply going to disappear with, putting a needle into your arm, that's not the case. A lot of the issues that we had before are still going to be here. The difficulty, certainly of doing business. I can tell you for myself. No, I'm in the US right now, and I am. I have never, and I'm going to say this, to the public. I have never been more unenthused in my life of coming back home, and that's very sad. That's very, very sad. And I think, these are the things that we have to understand as a society. I am unenthused. I look at what's happening at home between the almost militant invective of the Prime Minister. That's very, very uninspiring. The nebulous and almost completely ineffective work of the opposition. And I have to be very frank. I'll be very, very frank. And I just look at the political environment and say, goodness me. And then the kowtowing of many in the business community towards the government that, and I just tell myself, what does the future hold? So I think we have to begin to address the issues that were there before, and stop. We've held on to everything, and now it's vaccinate to operate. We need to do more to reconstruct both the society and the economy. If we are to come out of this, just back at where we were, much less better. I think coming out better is a dream.
So you think that there's an issue of motivation, lack of motivation, and lack of inspiration that has its roots in the political leadership and culture, and that is a challenge that is going to have devastating effects on the psychology of the population, and it's already having economic effects on the sociological structure of the population as well. I think those are serious issues, and we may have to talk about it again, because they are real issues. But I want to play a clip now from the Prime Minister in which he talks about the issue of motor cars and taxes, etc., and the benefits to people in the political realm, in the parliamentary system. I myself was a parliamentarian at one time, and I want to speak to that issue, and not so much the issue, but related to what you just raised about the tone of the politics and the way leaders behave in relation to the rest of the society. Can you play that clip, please?
Last year, October, this matter came up. Guys, and I say this to the country today, and I want you all to listen to me very carefully. I've been Prime Minister of this country for 6 years. I expect to be Prime Minister for a while longer. And one day I will not be the Prime Minister of this country. And the one thing I want to be able to say to the country when I leave this job is that I did not run a cabinet of corrupt people who sought to steal government money for their benefit. After 6 years, I'm on that track. And when it's ended, I hope to be able to say that to you. And it really galls me when persons who can't say that come in to take an issue about an exemption that is part of your terms and what you do with the money you earn. I could tell the country, no, I bought a vehicle because I drive myself. And as part of the terms of engagement for the job I do 24 hours a day, I accept the terms of my engagement. And if it displeases some people, I'm sorry. But I don't think it is fair for somebody to tell me what to do with what I earn when you have no interest in talking to those who have stolen public money. And you have no interest in that.
Okay. Did the Prime Minister miss the context and miss the boat by his response there, you think?
Well, first of all, I mean, listen, I'm already, I'm a citizen that speaks out for, and I don't care what anybody says, again, the PNM hacks and the and party hacks on both sides of the aisle, because I've been an equal critic, right? Because it's my right, but also my responsibility to attack my leaders, right? That's one of the central tenets of representative democracy, right? So outside of that, I'm going to say the Oscar goes to Dr. Keith Rowley for that performance at the end there, which is just it's an absurdity. First of all, you speak about the capping of the and I have no issue with the fact that parliamentarians and others have that concession. I mean, if I was in a position of authority, I would have higher salaries, attract more talented people, and do away with these cumbersome concessions, right? But he spotted two things, and I wrote it down. First of all, it was the capping, which has been exactly that. It's just been spoken about. So you come out, you give us this, dangle this carrot, or whatever it means, or what it may be, and then nothing is done about it. That's the first thing. The second thing is seeking legal advice, right? Now, when you win the lotto of what is currently the politics in Trinidad and Tobago, when you win that lotto, because like I said, when you become Prime Minister of this country, understand that, and this is both parties and how the system is designed, the political leaders pick the lower house, essentially select each member of the lower house. It's not selected by the people in the constituency, it's by the political leader. So you are selecting somebody who puts party before constituency. You then win the election, you then choose the upper house, right? So, and then every state board chairman, every person of influence, even the police commissioner in the country is handpicked by the political directorate. The independent bench is chosen by a president who was selected by a parliamentary majority. So, like I said, when you say, do I have a God complex, right? Our political leaders, our prime ministers are God. But when you win this lotto comes maximum power, but also maximum responsibility, right? So you come out and you speak about, you got legal advice. We both know, and most people watching this show know, there's the law and there's the spirit of the law, right? I have no issue with what is legal or what is not legal, right, in this instance. And what these people have done, right, is not necessarily illegal. And I don't know who else may have done it in the last 7 to 8 months. But the fact remains for the Prime Minister to come out and you're left on the end of that clip where he was rather rude and walked off the stage and said, give me a break. And he walked off the stage, right? But he comes out again and talks about foolishness and this type of denigrating, and he used the right word, uninspiring dialogue with the country. And then ties it back now to this narrative about how he has not led a corrupt government, right? So missing the point, obfuscating. The fact remains, in this environment, legal or not legal, it's certainly, think of the optics in politics as well, but it's distasteful, and it shows a disconnect that government decisions that we have had absolutely no choice to follow, businesses and individuals in this country who are lining up, and you want to talk about, the Prime Minister wants to go into this this discussion about about the things that they can and can't do and the advice that you have gotten, and painting this picture. Okay, I can paint a picture of people, thousands in line to get a bag with cheese and rice and flour to feed their families, right? The fact remains, in the spirit of the law, it was distasteful and it showed a disconnect between the people and the hardships that we face now. It's not a legal issue. You are legally entitled, but it should not have been done. It's simple.
Yeah, it's more a moral issue
Yes.
in the context and leadership by example. We have seen that kind of leadership expressed in New Zealand. And within Trinidad and Tobago, we've had the precedent of salary cuts by cabinets before. And basically trying to make a connection between what people are living and what they are feeling and how the society is being stressed, and showing some kind of empathy between leadership and the community that you are leading. Now, Peter, we're going to have to close it up from here. I want to thank you for, at this point, I want to thank you for coming on this morning and talking so freely and openly on the issues having to do not just with about the economy, but also about politics and governance. And I think in the end they're raising some constitutional issues about how we create the conditions under which we are governed. So I want to thank you for that all-embracing discussion. We'll have an opportunity to talk another time. And
Sure,
I wish you well in your business as we go forward. And like everybody else in this country who is patriotic and cares about the country, we hope that we will be able to see our way out of this. We have to restore the old economy. We have to see how we can restore lives with livelihoods in this country. But more than that, we have to build an entirely new economy, because the old economy, both the energy side and the traditional economy, is not going to save us in that world that is emerging. And I showed you the Virgin Atlantic effort in trying to go into space and where the rest of the world is headed. And we have to understand that the world is going somewhere in spite of everything, and we cannot stand in the same place or walk backwards. So thank you very much for listening to me today. This has been Brighter Morning with Bhoe on 97.5 FM, Hot Like Pepper Radio, and also on MCTV, the only multicultural, national, regional with regional and national products TV station in this part of the world. We thank you for listening, and we hope that during the course of the week we have some tremendously exciting guests that you will call us and engage. Thank you very much. My name is Bhoe Tewarie.